Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well. Don't forget, if you like the video, click on like and subscribe and talk about it on chat lines, wherever it is your social media activities, and help us to grow and help more people. I'll talk to you soon. Ross is here. My goodness, it's been a long time, hasn't it, Ross? Says, hey Mehran, male 33 UK, been a couple of years since I've been here. Where does the time go? I don't know. You're probably chasing girls. That's what's happening. Britu Barua says, I have visited your Instagram. I have seen a post in which you have mentioned about using positive self-suggestion like, I'm strong, I'm happy. Oh, good, because I don't remember that post, but I will revisit my Instagram and check it out. All right. And and B2 says how to use this method of self-suggestion and how this is different from Dr. Schwartz four-step method. Well, Dr. Schwartz four-step method is the way to go. And I think I have put those four steps for everybody. Let me see if I can find that four step and I can put it up for everyone to use. Give me moment, as a lot of a China in Austin Power movies says. Give me moment. hang on. What was I was looking for? Okay, there we go. All right. So Dr. Schwartz talks about the four steps to rewire the OCD brain. And he mentions that we all get deceptive brain messages anyhow, all of us. There are constant in human cognition, these deceptive brain messages. The four steps are relabel, reframe, refocus, and revalue. And if you do the relabel, reframe, and refocus, the revalue happens automatically. If you keep doing this, your whole system would automatically, without you going through the steps, will go through it automatically. And that's where neuroscience of habit comes to the picture. One of the problems that most people have in OCD is that they don't realize that when they're doing the compulsions, whether it's pure O in the form of non-physical activity involved in the OCD or obsession, compulsion, and then you do the, you go through the emotions, the whatever that compulsion may be. Every time you do any of these compulsions, whether it's pure O or physical type of OCD, you're stimulating a second circle in the striatum. You see, in midbrain basal ganglia, there is a place called striatum. Striatum and the habit center is very important to understand it. In the striatum, where habit center is, there are two other circles, two other centers right there. One is goal finding center, where you have the obsession and you need to comply to that, so you do the compulsion. So that's the goal that you want to achieve, to do the compulsion. Then you feel, I feel good. That I feel good gets the brain to secrete dopamine. So in other words, the reward center, which secretes dopamine, is also right in the striatum, in that one of those three centers. So goal finding center, you do the compulsion, you're stimulating at the same time, when you do the compulsion, stimulating the reward center, the dopamine center. So when every time you do the compulsion, whether it's pure O or the physical type of it, you get a shot of dopamine. And that's why you want to, after a while, to do the compulsion. That's why some of you feel like, I don't know why, I feel like I want that intrusive thought. It's not that you want the intrusive thought. You want to have that, so it gives you an opportunity to get the dopamine, because dopamine is addictive. And while dopamine is secreted, at the same time, while it stimulates the dopamine center and results in you getting some dopamine and that feeling, you also are stimulating the habit center. So in other words, for a while, you will be doing the compulsion because of the obsession. Like obsession, my hands are not clean, I got to wash it. So you do the compulsion, washing your hands. Then you feel, you get the dopamine. So for a while, you're doing it for the compulsion, you're doing the compulsion for the obsession. But then once you keep getting your dopamine, you're no longer doing it because of the obsession. You're doing it to get the dopamine. And then after a while doing it, you're no longer doing it to get the dopamine. You're doing it because it's your habit. That's when the danger happens. Not the real danger, but that's where you should be aware that once it becomes a habit, no longer you're realizing that this is OCD, because your brain has taken over the habit center, and the habit, which has caused the whole thing to become so automatic, like you're not analyzing it, you're automatically doing this thing, and everything has become so automatic, that you don't recognize this being an OCD. You think this is you. You think this is the brain doing it, which brain, not knowing, you think brain is you. And the automatic nature of this habit forming things from the habit center makes you not see that this is separate from you. You will think this whole thing, pure O or the OCD, whatever, it's you. That's what you think you are, and you prefer it because the brain is so powerful that masks the fact that this is habit, and you will be oblivious to it. So once it becomes a habit, this is what you should be doing. You recognize the habit. That's the intrusive thought, or that's what it is, the habit. And then you become mindful of what it is, not letting the autonomic behavior to mask it from you, to know that this is not you, this is the brain. So you become mindful and pay full attention to what's happening. And once you notice that, then you become fully mindful and full attention to another positive activity that is in line with your values and with something that you want to accomplish at that time, at that day, at that moment. So in other words, you're recognizing the glitch, you fully pay attention to it and be mindful of it. And once you recognize it, you switch it over and use that energy and mindfulness and full attention to something positive. So you're switching this to that, which is a way neuroplasticity takes place, and you're actually rewiring the brain from habit, taking it out and breaking that system. And if you do that continuously long enough, you'll be out of that glitch and everything would become clear to you, and the separation between brain and you become more clear to you. And of course, with the other information that is available to you, you continue the 4-step, you continue the videos and understanding of the masters who have taught and researched. Dr. Schwartz researched this for big part of his 30 years of research. And of course, he's an expert in neuroscience of habits, and the 4-step, which is right here. I'll go through it for you so you will have a record of it. So we continue the relabel, reframe, refocus, and revalue. So step 1, relabel. Put a meaning to your experience, especially experiences which are deceptive brain messages that are going away from your long-term goal and values. In other words, that the messages that comes to your brain, that they are actually taking you away on what the message is. It's away from your long-term goal and values. Those are deceptive messages. You put a meaning to it. For example, if you feel like you're worrying, you say, I'm feeling worrying right now. So you put a meaning to that feeling. You feel agitated, you say, I'm getting agitated right now. You feel anxious, you say, I'm getting anxious right now. You put a meaning to that feeling. Then you actually remind yourself how you are feeling right now by putting a label on it. So you relabel it from what it is. You relabel it for what it is the brain is trying to make you think it is. You relabel it and interpret it. That's step 1. Step two is there are two major ways to reframing. One is to use mindful awareness and use the wise advocate. Dr. Schwartz calls the principles that you hold sacred and your logic, you, the awareness, wise advocate, that you can consult with it, with your values. Dr. Philipson calls it gatekeeper, and I call it superconsciousness. Either way, it's a way for you to have a backer, someone, something, that some entity, some point of reference that you will compare what's going on with your values, and you have a value system. You consult with that logic and those values and principles. So one is mindful awareness and use the wise advocate and consult with the wise advocate. But something that enhances doing that, becoming aware of the cognitive distortion. In Dr. Schwartz's book, If You Are Not the Brain, there is a table of 8 cognitive distortions from which we mention 2 of them here. 2 classes. One is all or nothing. In other words, the way of all or nothing thinking is when you should be aware when you get into a black and white thinking. This is when you basically saying this is either great or this is terrible. There's no gray area. Be aware that you want to most of the time be able to think in some version of the gray zone. Certainly as a way of proceeding what you are thinking. So you don't want to get down on yourself by using all or nothing thinking, which basically has a tendency to throw the baby out with the bathwater. If it's not perfect, then it's terrible. That's the way some people conclude things. If it's not perfect, then it's terrible. If I 100% don't have any intrusive thought, and if it just happens to have some intrusive thought or a intrusive thought, then everything is terrible. And if I don't have it, then I'm perfect. That's a mentality, and that's a way to approach it. You should not. You do not want to approach that way. And he continues, says there is lots of things that aren't but can get better if you work with them, and recognizing all or nothing thinking as a cognitive distortion will prevent you from throwing the baby out with the bathwater. The other one, which is very important, is what we call emotional reasoning. Emotional reasoning is one where just because you feel something is wrong, you immediately jump into conclusion that something must be wrong. Just when you feel something is wrong, you take that feeling to be a reason for you to believe that something must be wrong because I feel something is wrong. That's also a dangerous way of thinking, because just because you feel something's wrong doesn't necessarily mean anything's wrong. Sometimes when you feel discouraged or disappointed or depressed, sad, suddenly the whole thing is gloomy. But really everything is the same as it was. It's not really gloomy, but you're using your feeling to be a reason that I don't feel things are right, therefore things must not be right. That's a bad way of allowing yourself to fall into that trap. Says, now it doesn't mean that you ignore what the feeling is, that sometimes something is wrong. In fact, you relabel the feeling that something's wrong. In other words, the feeling, you relabel it that it's telling me something is wrong. Like relabeling would be, I'm feeling that something is wrong. But then you frame it and reframe it to say, is this just a feeling or is something really wrong? Just because you feel something is wrong doesn't mean you should have a conclusion and believe that something must be wrong. You do the same thing, you relabel it. It says, I'm feeling that something is wrong. Then you say, you reframe it. Step 2, is this just a feeling or something is really wrong? You just reframed it. Then you think it through, you consult your wise advocate, So you don't make the cognitive distortion of confusing reality with your feelings and making jump to a conclusion. I feel like something is wrong, then something must be wrong. So if you focus on what he's trying to say, is that you question and relabel what is coming to your head, that I feel something is wrong. Then you reframe it. Do I feel something is wrong? Or is it really something is wrong? Now you're consulting with your wise advocate. You're recognizing this is suggestion, but that doesn't mean just because it came to your head, it must be definitely something wrong. So you understand that this is a cognitive distortion, and you don't want to allow the cognitive distortion would confuse the reality with your feeling and jumping into conclusion that I feel something is wrong, therefore something must be wrong. So something might well be wrong, but it may not be the thing that you feel is wrong. And this helps you to, again, consult your wise advocate to think more clearly and relabel, reframe. These are the first two steps. Step 3 is refocus. So once you have used relabeling and reframing to basically get your cognitive field clear and you're recognizing where you want to go, now you focus your attention in the moment in the direction you want to go. And that basically means do something constructive. It can be very simple. It can be very, very simple. And a lot of time, if you're worried or you're nervous, just actually focusing your attention on anything that tends to, again, direct your attention away from that you're worrying about and give you a chance to sort of not act precipitously, and has the added benefit of doing something constructive. So you take yourself out of that vortex of feeling being the reason that something is wrong and relying on that. You simply focus on something positive, something productive, something that is in line with what you want to accomplish, and you get yourself out of that rot that you have created by constantly ruminating on that feeling or the deceptive cognitive expressions. So refocusing is, again, an intentional control approach, and that is where you rewire your brain. So just we talked about, you recognize it, be mindful, pay full attention to what it is, and once you know it, you become mindful and pay full attention to something positive that you want to do and put your energy into that. So in other words, you changing gear from this that you're not in control, and the brain is trying to, through habit, making you think that this is the way you should be, and you switch it over to something that you purposely want to do and accomplish, and you switch the energy to that, which brings your mindfulness to the present moment and gets you out of that rot and not let it to become part of your habit. So it's through the refocusing of attention that the brain gets rewired. And when you use the first 3 steps, relabel, reframe, refocus, regularly, the 4th step, revalue, basically starts to kick in essentially automatically. And what that means is you start to actually get an adaptive value system, which kind of relabels, reframes, and gets you in the path of refocusing without having to break it down into 3 steps. So after a while you're doing it, you have rewired the brain, and then it's going to happen automatically without you having to go through all these steps, noticeably. So that is what Dr. Schwartz means revaluing when he talks about doing this regularly, refocusing regularly after you relabeling and reframing gets you into a pattern in which you actually wire your wise advocate, and Dr. Philipson calls it the gatekeeper, and superconscious is something else that you can use, and you actually wire your wise advocate into your habit center. So your wise advocate now becomes wired to the habit center. And revaluating is reflecting of that, and that now your valuation are more constructive. Your wise advocate is now automatically part of the choices you make. And this is basically a positive feedback mechanism that allows you to rewire your brain continually in a more and more adaptive and functional way. And that is the hallmark of self-directed neuroplasticity. And that is the 4 steps of Dr. Schwartz, which I hope that you guys can refer back to it and benefit from it. All right. So now you all have a copy of it that I will probably cut it and put it in one shot for you. Cold tea. Wonderful. I guess I had that before I went to breakfast. I just came back. It's still here. Okay, so where are we now? Subscribe on my channel, visit my channel, and go through the videos that you might be interested in. mind@seekstruth.com, making it one step away to talk to me one-on-one on Skype and discuss what's concerning you. I'll talk to you soon.